Corrections and Institutions. We're running a little late. A few of us came in a little late, including me. Had a lot of things I had to get done this morning, so I apologize. We are going to be starting with Buildings and General Services, BGS. We're making another shift to our capital bill, and we do this every year. We do an update in terms of our spreadsheet here, so you'll have to pull out the spreadsheet. And let me just give you some advice. Take it or leave it. When we work with a spreadsheet, as we continue working with spreadsheets, it's much easier to work on a paper copy than online because they become so difficult and small, and they're really difficult to work with online. So it's just a heads up that we tend to do our spreadsheets on paper. But if you're comfortable doing it online, feel free.
Are these posted on the committee page?
It was posted on January 5th.
Okay.
Click on other documents.
Because I refuse to get glasses and I'm having a hard time.
Well, they're going to be bigger. This is condensed, small.
It's in there. Okay.
Yeah, it is. But when we get the spreadsheet with the governor's budget, they're going to be much bigger.
Oh, cool.
When we work on them, they're going to be this size.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, that's why it's really difficult to work online.
Yeah.
Even if you had glasses, it wouldn't help a lot.
Yeah, I struggled last week because I was
Yeah,
wearing my
they're
glasses and not my
pretty small.
contacts. And I said, no, I understand what people are saying. You can't read it. Because with my contacts and reading glasses, I can read
You're
it.
all right, yeah.
I'm all right. But Dan did say, when he's doing the BA, when he's going over the BAA, I think can you make an effort to Dan when he does print the spreadsheet for the BAA that it's done bigger for that. But we always do this at the beginning of the session, get an update from BGS in terms of where they are for these specific projects in the BGS section, as well as Public Safety Agency of Human Services for those that they're responsible for. They are limited in what they can give us in terms of how we're going to go forward in FY24 and 25 because the governor has not presented his budget yet. So they're limited in that. So sometimes we may ask a question that they really cannot answer because the administration is still putting together the budget.
That's coming out next Thursday?
It's coming out Friday next week at 1:00. And it's usually about an hour budget address. And then after that, hopefully, Eric, I know, is working his tail off, is doing our 3-ring notebook. And this is, as I said, this is how our capital bill budget will be presented to us. It will be on our desk here after the governor's budget address. So we're trying to figure out how best to do this so we don't hold people up too late on a Friday afternoon. But hopefully maybe we can at least distribute the spreadsheets, can quickly go over it, maybe with someone from BGS, but it's really the Secretary of the Administration that will be presenting to us the budget, but that will be when we return the following Tuesday. But at least when you go home next week on Friday, you will have the governor's budget if you want to spend time looking at it over the weekend. Weekend reading, bedtime reading will put you to sleep.
That's for sure.
It will put you to sleep. So
That's not a
anyway.
bad thing.
Do they have it on books on tape?
That would really put you to sleep.
It's coming right here.
I'd probably get the assignment to read it. 22.
And don't listen to it while you're driving, because you're really. So who's coming up? Joe?
Yes.
You're going to get in the hot seat. Welcome.
Maybe interpretive dance.
Huh?
Interpretive dance budget presentation.
Well, that will not be good. Think of a few moves.
A lot of blinking.
Yeah. Does it involve hand gestures?
Yeah.
I figured that.
Oh, God. Okay.
It does, yeah.
You're both set? You want to?
Yes.
Chip, can you open the transfer?
It's fine with me. Put a glow around the three of us.
I know,
Got it with
backlit.
the snow globe out there today.
It's snow though. It's pretty out. It's finally getting,
That's gorgeous.
finally getting some snow. Hallelujah.
Good to see snow down.
This is easy.
No skating rink.
2 weeks out. Then it'll be.
Yeah, it'll be different in a couple of weeks. Welcome, Joe. So if you could just identify yourself for the record, and I think as we go item by item, if there's questions from the committee, just ask it. I mean, raise your hand. I'll call on you. But let's just do item by item and then have the questions for that particular item.
Comment, we like Joe's tie.
Thank you.
It is bright.
It is?
Looks like a peacock
Oh,
feather.
yeah.
Wait till I get into Bugs Bunny.
That's sweet for you.
Ease it into it.
Really slide in.
Okay, I'll remember that. For the record, Joe Agin with BGS. Good morning. I presume you all had, listening to Madam Chair about having a spreadsheet. Although my sheet is larger, all it is does have some notes for myself as we go through. I'll start at the top with statewide major maintenance. It's an annual appropriation that we get every year. We have been slowly trying to increase because of the age of our buildings and the items that we have coming out for maintenance type projects, that we just need additional funds to maintain all of them we have. We have increased substantially from the 80s when I first started this year, where our major maintenance was a lot lower. We did have a dip when we had Irene. We lost 3.5 project managers. We transferred 3.5 project managers to work on the Waterbury complex to get that project done. During that time, we did not spend a lot of major maintenance. We gave some money back to the REPO committee. And now we're trying to play that catch-up game again. So after the budget drops, Lauren Washburn, my other program chief, will be here to describe actually what our major maintenance projects are. But sort of the condensed version is, we get lists from our major maintenance, our maintenance personnel, operations and maintenance, some of our project managers, even across from, because of the system that we have, a work order can come in from anybody that's a state employee. So if they see something that ceiling tile stayed, roof leak, our operations and maintenance people try to vet that first. If it can be handled by them, they take care of that. Their funding is fee for space. I won't get into that. But if it's too large for them, then it gets kicked over to my shop. And then we prioritize the projects for major maintenance. We now are distributing major maintenance projects at a lump every 6 months. So we come in, we're looking at them in January, and again in July, we give that out to the project managers. Priority 1 projects are critical. The system, the item has failed. So just because a roof leaks does not mean it's failed and has to be replaced. Our operations and maintenance staff, they hire a roofer to go out and patch it, but it's really at the time that it gets replaced, that is when my shop gets involved, and we will use major maintenance money. As I said the other day, it's typically between $5,000 and up to $700,000 now, just because of inflation. It used to be way back in the early days at $250,000. It's not to say though that a project won't come before you as a line item that is truly a roof replacement, but it's due to that higher cost, it would become a line item.
Do folks know what he means by saying line item?
Yes.
It means it's going to be a particular line on the spreadsheet or in the budget. Okay. Gina and then Troy.
What's the threshold for it to become a line item?
Roughly 700,000, but I have been here before at 700,000 now, but I have been here for if it's a new maintenance shed or something like that, 500,000, it could be a line item because it's a new building.
Okay.
So it varies. It's really looking at how complex that project is and what it involves. If it's a roof, it would be above that 700,000. If that value went higher, we would need more in major maintenance, and then you may actually be wanting to look at all of the major maintenance projects. It's just that this is a quick turnaround and eyeballing and going on 120 State Street roof. That would be a line item project.
Okay.
over here at 1 Baldwin, doing the porch roof, that would be major.
All right.
Troy? Wayne?
So the lower, before you get to the threshold, so fee for space is paying for that. How do you work that into the budget? It's not, obviously.
It's not in this is the operation and maintenance funding that they have in fee for space, so they will hire a contractor to come out and patch it, $200, $300, something like that.
Will it be in your budget, your BGS budget, or will it be in the agency budget?
That's in BGS budget for fee for space, which is everybody else. I don't want to describe the whole thing because I can't, but it's basically a funding source that agencies have. The money goes to them, and then they're paying us back. They include fuel, custodial, all that stuff is in there. 99% of my work is capital.
Is what?
Capital bill items.
Oh, capital.
Every now and then, because of the complexity maybe, I would do something on a fee for space.
I see you've got a line item for, as you were just speaking about, Brattleboro Courthouse roof.
Yes.
Do they vacate the building on a roofing project like that? Okay, yeah.
We have vacated, unfortunately, due to some of the glues that are out there.
Oh, no kidding.
So it is an act of shutting down an air handler while if we're doing a
Okay.
glued roof.
Yeah.
But typically, no, it is a
You
little
don't have
bit
to
noisy
vacate.
at
Yeah,
times, depends on the type of roof we're doing,
Yeah, okay,
on how it's anchored.
thank you.
So also along with the priority 1 items that have critically failed are life safety. So if a fire alarm fails, fire alarms are electronic. So it's one of those things that every 10 years or so, 15, they're on their way out. Somebody thought of it, sort of like an iPhone, that's bad, but you just come out every year and a half. Fire alarms and electronics are like that are, 10, 15 years. So once you can no longer get parts, we have to go back through and change it all out. So that's the heads that you see in the rooms, the main panel. If it's over 20 to 25 years, we also look at the wiring to pull that out, and that would be a 20-year item. Other issues could be ADA, code compliance, items like that. So, if sidewalks heave, certain portion of a building that is not accessible but has to become accessible because there's a need, that would also come out. It's not about building new stuff. New stuff can be done with it, but it's not about something new. Typically, the new stuff is all in the line.
Yep,
So are you still analyzing old buildings for ADA compliance? Is that something that happens on a regular basis?
It's out there, not necessarily on a regular basis, because there's the reasonable accommodations that transpire in some of these old buildings. Some of them we cannot address. The 132 State Street, 3 years ago, we were looking at how to make the second floor over there accessible. Mainly for a fire escape, but it would be an elevator and everything else, and it doesn't work well with the building because of how much space it takes up.
Yeah.
John?
How often do you, or how close do you come to hitting these numbers at the general rule?
I try to shoot for those numbers because I'm out of money. So as I said earlier, we are working our way through, trying to play catch up, and we are starting to burn through the 22 money right now. And so we're planning ahead. So it depends a lot on what my staff has for projects. Right now, I'm down 6 project managers. So 3 just left in the past 3 weeks. And so we've been, when that happens, juggle around. It's some more priority items that have to be taken care of. But we are starting to burn through this. Before Irene, we had to slow down about this time of year every year because we would be burning money. And the intent is to better plan for that so that as July 1st shows up, we're out of money. And I think in a year and 2, we'll be back at that.
But it's never a use it or lose it.
No.
Oh, well.
Well, if it's out there for more than 2 years, not a biennium, yes, there's the repo committee who looks at it, but typically, and we'll get into that, when that happens. Yes, congratulations, members. We will get into there and I'll describe to you what's going on with that. Anything else on major maintenance?
Remember, if the projects are not ready to go, the money's not there because the treasurer has not gone out to bond. for that amount of money. So it's not like there's a pot there of a fund that there's these capital dollars in there. It's not the way it operates. It's a credit card. So when you're ready to purchase something, you're going to put it on your credit card. You're not going to put it on your credit card a year before you're going to purchase it. That's a simple way of looking at it.
BGS engineering architectural cost, that used to be bonded money. Last year, it went to the general fund. And what that, it used to pay for all the operating expenses, basically out of my shop. From CAD people, all our salaries, all the stuff that our fee for space, fee and all of that, but now they moved that over to the cash fund. It had been, I forget the year, we were supposed to go back to the general fund.
3 years ago.
Something like that, and we finally made it last year.
Eric?
Just Eric Filcorn, BGS, I just wanted to clarify, he said cash fund, and it's actually
general
fund, like any
General
other
fund.
salary. It was included in the capital bill because when you hire an architectural firm, their overhead is part of the cost of a project. And so I think that was the argument for handling Joe's crew that way.
Right. And then we kept saying, you know, that's 3.7 million, and our bonding capacity is decreasing. And it's really a general fund expense because you're paying salaries. But on the other hand, it's those folks within BGS who are working on these projects that are funded by the capital bill. And that is an allowable expense of bonded dollars. But Wayne?
So this line item won't be in capital this year?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Did that till
It could be.
Friday afternoon.
Sorry for asking.
Quite all right.
So this is an example where we're connected with Appropriations Committee. We don't operate in isolation with that committee. Eric?
I think there was actually language in the bill that ended the reallocation. So, well, I suppose we could propose renewing the.
Well, we did a
Sunset.
notwithstanding a couple years ago to that language.
So if it's removed as a bonded item, then it goes to appropriations and they,
It's out of the general funds, so it's in their budget,
okay.
Like any other salary.
like any other salary. And there isn't a line item for it, it's within the BGS
Sure.
general fund appropriations. So that is one thing, whomever's going to be the liaison to the Appropriations Committee in the BGS part of their general fund budget, this is one of the items that you'd be focused on for this. Because there may be a move at some point, the governor may propose in his budget that this gets moved back to the capital bill. He may do that. He may keep it up at the general fund or appropriations, but as appropriations going through their deliberation and markup, they may find they're in a tight squeeze and they may come down here and ask us to pick it up in our budget or pick up a portion of it.
Horses will be traded,
More than horses.
or at least displayed.
And one thing that we've always done here in this committee for years as another money committee is really to help our other money committees in their budgeting too. Many times if the general fund is under a lot of pressure, we may be able to find a few million here and there within our capital budget to help them out, but we work with Joint Fiscal Office and the treasurer to make sure that those bonded dollars it's an allowable expense for bonded dollars. So we work pretty closely with the two budgets.
Do we do a memo to appropriations too?
And we do a little, but with something like that, it's negotiated, it's agreed with the chairs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, or members of the committee, we
Yep.
just kind of, we don't do a formal memo
Okay.
for that. It's a waste of time for our legal staff and joint fiscal to
Yeah.
do that.
Well, the policy committees all do it. That's why I was
Yeah.
coming from.
Yeah, well, I don't think they're gonna do it so much this year, because,
That is the case.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'm hearing.
Statewide physical security enhancements. A lot of this work is done out of the BGS security shop. And they're the ones who take care of all the video cameras, the data systems that have to go with that, also the car access system, and also looking at other things, including there are some alarm systems that are out there. This is what they do. So they're out there when, again, it's an electronic system, so it's coming to an end of life. So they're now looking at a new system, whether it's the same company or not, using the same cards, not sure because of the new technology that is out there. So that's what this money is for. So they're, card readers, servers sometimes die, stuff like that. Video cameras have to be replaced. That's what this ongoing request is for, is to not only add additional doors, cameras here and there, depends on what's going on a day-to-day basis, but also to maintain that equipment.
Troy?
So as that conversation continues, does this group hear about those purchases? Meaning, if you're looking at a new physical security camera system, I'd be concerned about face scanning, AI, technology that can be incredibly basic. Do we play a role in proving those?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know who has that authority. I believe we can't do it. I just don't know where that technology, but we do not.
You mean the face scanning?
Right.
No, but if you're having those conversations about using this money to buy a new surveillance, IDing people through scanning, I'd be concerned about spending money on that.
Eric?
Did I already do Eric Philcorn, BGS? This is really more for kind of perpetuating day to day. I'm thinking of an example where there was a area in the building where the tax department was working, and the public space was encroaching on the secure space, and we had to move doors around, and we had to change the card reader configurations. We might have to add cameras, but those are existing systems. Those are enhancements to existing systems. If we were to look at a new security camera system, or we use a system called ProWatch now, and its capabilities are carefully regulated. I know that we don't opt in to that kind of stuff at the moment, but any new system acquisition would be, I hesitate to say how many millions of dollars. It would go through an extensive procurement process with the Agency of Digital Services. There would be a big budget ask.
It would be a line item.
Yeah, it would be a big, long process, and it might not even be in this bill. So, yeah, that's a much bigger fish to fry. This is really, I don't want to say it's just maintenance, but it is like replacing things that wear out, reconfiguring spaces so that they're more secure for employees, the badging system, that kind of stuff. I understand your concern.
And it's not for, we also, BGS has security staff. And this does not go to staff. We don't go to operating expenses. We don't go to salaries. This goes to equipment. And also just a little clarity in terms of BGS's security staff. They're not there as law enforcement or security as we may think in a building with crowd control, that type of thing. They're there for security of the building. They want to make sure at night the door's locked, the heat's on, the windows are closed, that type of thing. So just, there is a delineation there. So just keep that in mind too. Because down the road, we may be talking about security issues at some point. So just, yeah, this is true. Yeah.
Statewide planning, reuse and contingency. I know the commissioner has touched a little bit on this. So starting with planning, again, we are trying to get out in front and look at buildings and issues that we want to bring forth as a larger project and as a whole. Going back a little bit to major maintenance, what we're also trying to do with major maintenance and some of this planning is when we build a building, not just replace one item, but if we're looking at a whole, to take this item, they're all major maintenance, and get it in under one contractor and only disturb the people once. So with planning though, it's a larger thing of looking at items. We are out there looking at Berry Courthouse. Washington Court at Berry. What we're doing there is several years ago, the court had a study done with us that the way they function and their in-house does not work well because the interaction between jury, the judge, plank coming in, they all were one back corridor together. So it was really about a stoplight issue going on. And so they were looking at that and that they needed more space. At that same time, the building was built in 1982. And so what we're looking at is there was no air conditioning.
Yeah,
Installed in
it's
that
all
point?
window units.
Yes,
Yeah.
it makes it lovely, everything pointed out, but it was designed in the 80s, it's on a skew because it was open office, everybody opens their windows and you feel this nice breeze. From 82 on, somebody has taken the outer wall and enclosed an office, and so that has become a very big issue. Even though there are window units, it takes a while to get cooling into the inside core. So with that, I looked at, well, if we're going to be doing a major addition, what does the rest of the building have to do to bring it up to code and everything else? And that's what this planning study is doing.
Chip?
So courthouses are administered by the county. So
Yes and no.
the side
Yes and
judges
no.
have a budget.
It depends on the courthouse.
Which one?
Depends on the courthouse.
Okay.
Some are state.
Washington County,
Yep.
the courthouse here down the
Yep.
street, that one is a county. The one in Berry is a district court, even though now they're combined.
Oh, yes, okay, I understand.
Sure, in on that
the
one.
difference, yeah. But my question was, we got two courthouses in the state, in Grand Island and Guildhall, which are like bungalows. I mean, they are,
They're quaint.
yes, they're quaint. So I'm asking, my question was, that's a better term, I agree. My question is that, do you meet resistance when you think in terms of renovations or?
Those are not under,
They're not on the BGS, okay,
Not on
that
the
explains it,
budget.
yep, that explains my
Except-
question, yep.
Except
always an exception.
the one in Middlebury and except the one in Wall County where we have joint jurisdiction.
We do.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there has been
That's a historic building.
funding
No,
that has come through capital bill to do a little bit of work in those
Uh-huh.
facilities, and we have helped out. So Washington County Court here, ADA issue, we helped out with putting in the lift. We did ADA, there's some ADA money a few years
Woodstock.
back, 6 years back maybe. We were at Guildhall, and I know we've done work in Grand Isle, but that was 10, 15 years ago.
Guildhall was renovated by Kingdom County Productions when they made the movie out there. That's when they brought in indoor plumbing.
Gina?
With an eye on these courthouses, they must fall under the historic category.
Yes.
So who ultimately controls where the historic button, so to speak, is triggered?
If my team's working on the project, we work with historic preservation to go, here's the need. What can we do? What can you accept? And some, around code, when we were dealing with COVID issues and getting air into some of our courtrooms and the likes of that, they look at it and go, it's a need, we got to do something. And can you do this? Can you, hide it in the wall here, do this style event? So it may be a little extra money to do something, but we work with them. There are times when you don't want to match the existing construction. HP clearly wants to know that that was an addition. You're not trying to mimic anything that was there built 100 years ago. And so stuff like that, they go, okay, this is what they will accept. So we work with them.
And does historic preservation primarily come to us through our committee?
No. They do, they have a line item, but those are for our historic sites at the Calvin Coolidge, Hubbardton Battlefield, Fort Ticonderoga, that type of thing.
Okay.
Is what is for our historic sites, state-owned sites,
But they have money coming out of the general fund as well?
for their operations.
Okay.
Yes, that's totally separate.
There's state and federal regulations that they comply with. Because as the commissioner said the other day, anything over 50 years is considered historic. That doesn't mean that it's worth anything to them. But then it's the historical register and all of that, those different tiers, and whether they're state and federal funds. If it's private, you got a 150-year-old barn and you want to take it down or renovate it, you're not getting any federal grants or state grants from that. It's okay. They may shed a tear or two, but yes. And that's part of the process down in Windsor for years. The silos down there, beautiful
The
silos.
correctional facility.
Correctional facility itself.
Oh, yeah.
What was Southeast State? Nice silos. They were considered historic. We couldn't do any demolition. They are still nice silos. But again, now we can,
Do like
for the
silos.
use of the site, they have looked at it and said, okay, if you do this whole photo shoot, show what it was back in the day, then you can demo it. So there is that process you can go through.
John?
How do you make a decision when to help out on a county courthouse? Seems like you're setting a precedent.
I don't make that decision, I'm told.
You don't. You don't.
In here, then it would be coming to us if it's coming to BGS. There are times when that was for the ADA work and stuff like that. Every now and then, judiciary has reached out to us. During COVID and whatnot, we didn't have the staff, and they hired their own for their county courthouse. Anything more on planning? Reuse is about, as the commissioner was discussing the other day, this consolidation and whatnot of space and everything else. So if we're looking at some, an agency, department, division to sort of move them around and downsize, that is reuse money. So we'll go in there, maybe new carpet, new paint, have to build a wall or two, or add a restroom, something like that. That is when we use reuse. Contingency by statute, commissioners limited to $50,000 on any project that's in the capital bill. Lately, we haven't hit it, thankfully, because of the 2-year process, but it is still in there just in case. And so that if, it comes up, it's not just a given. It's one of those things that we have to advocate for it. I advocate for it. That, we do need this additional part of the project for this beneficial use or something. But those were those 3 items are, and how that works in given year.
So that $50,000 cap, so say we have a line item for a project and they went out to bid. And it came in 25,000, 50,000 more than what we had put in for a line item for that project. They can go to this contingency fund to pull from that, to meet that bid.
It's up to what you call them reuse.
No, that's contingency, but it is planning, reuse, and contingency. That's all.
It's all one lump.
Why was there nothing for FY '23 on that?
For what? FY,
'23. Why was it just?
there's half a
Oh, I'm
million.
sorry, I'm a line below, sorry.
You're a line below. Oh, that one is ongoing.
Next up, 108 Cherry Street.
It keeps moving.
Yes, the building's a lot better than the garage, but unfortunately the building sits on top of the garage.
Garage holds up the building.
Yes, it does.
And we are gonna go see the garage
Wonderful.
when we go up there next week. Our field trip has been approved. And we will be going into, I know it's gonna be boring, but on the other hand, it might be really interesting to see what we're up against, because the garage is holding up that building. And that building provides services to Vermonters. And we did not build this building. We did not build this parking garage. It was built by a private entity. And then they got at the end of the useful life of that building, and we got it. And the same thing happened in Rutland with the Ace of Bloomer. And they have a parking garage.
It's not
So,
under it though.
no, it's beside it.
It's a little bit better in open air. So this is 4 levels. One's at the top level, then you start pitching down by ramps 4 levels deep. And parking garages are horrible in the fact that we have salt on our vehicles, so they sit there the whole time that you're parked and drip and everything else, and get down into the cracks, get into the concrete, and unfortunately rusting can start. And if you don't maintain it over the years, it's a problem. Back in the early 20s, we spent money on resurfacing, and that worked for a short period of time. We did that at 32 Cherry Street also. However, over the years, we did not put additional funds into that. So I want to say 5 years ago, we went out to this study, brought in an engineering firm to look at this. One of their recommendations for 108 Cherry Street was spending roughly $250,000 a year to maintain that. Or a good way was studded tires for people who are parking. You would still need maintenance, but that was one of the issues. So it's a membrane on top of your concrete. And so once you start puncturing that membrane, that's when the water and the salts get in. It happens. And so you'll see at 108, we have been at this for a while. It is past its time of maintenance. It needs a major overhaul, and that's why we have been asking for money over the years because of the cost to do that. We went out a year ago with a hard bid being with a general contractor with complete set of plans and specs. Put that on the street, and that came in at 22.5 million. We were expecting to be around 18.
You were expecting what?
Around 18 million.
And when did you go out?
That was that would have been in 21.
Oh, God.
Budget.
18, I believe, total project cost. And so what happened is, because how much of the construction has to go on, it's very noisy, it was gonna be done at night. Trades were very hard to get a hold of. And so we had a discussion before signing any paperwork with the contractor and said, why is your cost so high? They're like, well, night work alone is costing an additional $3 million. So if you could, if we could work during the day, that would be a big savings. The engineer also thought things were a little bit high, but actually got worse because of the COVID and inflation and everything else. So we did not go forth with the contract. We did not sign it, and we regrouped and said, let's do this construction management. And what we can do with the construction management project is it's open book. We can work with a contractor because noisy stuff could be done at night, off hours. The non-noisy stuff could be done during the day. You pay a little bit more for a superintendent for that, but the overall cost would be less. Unfortunately, inflation hit. I can't tell you the top dollar because we're still sort of in that negotiation portion, but it is more. And so that's what we're dealing with right now, is that inflation is horrible. This contractor also cannot find anybody to do work at night. So that's a problem. So these are what we're looking at is, okay, what can we do for the demolition of the concrete and things and the rest of that?
John and then Troy?
Who owns the building that's on top?
We do.
We do.
It's a state office
It
building.
is a state office building, yeah. It was built, we call it a property management building. It was a different fund than the Capitol building, the way it is. I don't know enough about that, but
Wasn't it about 20-year?
it was more than 20
Was it
years.
more than 20?
We're still paying.
Yeah.
So,
I think some Bloomberg was kind of a lease off.
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
What kind
Okay.
of pressure do you get from the city on something like that?
For
It's like,
maintaining it?
no, like when are you gonna do this? What's?
No, because this is all for state employee parking. So they have no say, right?
Well, not that they don't have a say, but like, are they tugging at your sleeve and saying, hey, do this?
No, where they would come into play though is if we're working at night and the compressors for the hydro demolition, water doing the demolition, the noise of that,
Yeah.
noise ordinance would come into play and that would be a discussion.
But Troy brings up a really good issue, and I was going to mention this. I know, Wayne, you have a question, so hold on. But Troy brings up a really good question, because it may not be the city that's involved, or in Rutland, we have the Asa Bloomer building. The city gets involved a little bit in that one, but not much. But these particular situations, your constituents are impacted. Because state employees are the ones who use this parking garage. It's not open to the public, right?
That is correct.
So it's state employees who use this garage. So they need a pass to open up the gate or the door to get in there. Then it closes behind them. So if there's really issues here in that garage or in the one in Rutland, you're gonna hear from it from your constituents. And that's where the beauty of this committee and the beauty of this bill, the capital bill, has a direct impact on our constituents. We may not think so, but constituents relate to potholes. They relate to a crumbling place where they're parking their car and they got concrete falling on their car. They relate to that and they reach out and say, why aren't you guys taking care of this? Why aren't you folks taking care of it? That's what they care about. And that's how we can link our work here in this committee, in this capital bill, with the lives of Vermonters out there who are our constituents. And some of this may seem really dull and boring, but, folks need to get to work and they don't want to have to pay for damages to their car because of falling concrete in a parking garage that we own. So I'm gonna go to Wayne and then you, John, and then Eric.
Is the 18 million still available?
Yes.
Okay.
We're gonna be banking.
Mine's is the superstructure, the metal superstructure sound.
It's concrete, it's reinforced steel, and it's not sound, this is why we are doing this. It's sound enough right now that we can still use it.
Structurally.
Now, it's not gonna come crashing down, but it's at a point now, when you take your field trip, you will see that there's exposed reinforcing steel. And it's at its point
Exposed to
that,
salt.
yes. And we have had incidents where chunks have fallen down. John, I think that was the one way, not 32, actually reached up and took a piece down before it fell on a car, so.
I mean, that's what we're dealing with. If one of our state employees has their car damaged, we could be liable for that.
And so there's 32 Cherry Street has a parking garage, that's at Costello Courthouse. And down in Rutland, there's the Merle Valley Transit Center.
Eric, you wanted to weigh in?
I was just going to mention, as you were talking about constituents, and we kind of touched on state employees, just to remember that we're one of the state's largest employers. And so sometimes it helps to put ourselves in the frame of mind of we are, global foundries or something like that, and we're taking care of our people.
So you have, for this parking garage, you said 18 million in the bank. Minus what we pushed over to Williston?
Oh, yes, right, that's correct.
Minus 3 million, basically. So if you look on this spreadsheet, FY22 and FY23, what we did in our session 2 years ago, when we put together this 2-year budget, we knew there was money in the bank. We wanted them to continue on this project. So we said 3.1 million, 22. We're not gonna put anything in 23 and kind of wait and see how far along they get. And then when we did the budget adjustment last year in January on this 2-year budget, then we check in and do you need all this money? Do you need more? Can we cut it back a little bit? Because you're not getting it out the door as quickly. You had 15, 18 million, you're not getting it out the door as quickly, so let's pull back some of that and put it towards another project. Gina and then Wayne.
Are we gonna get a spreadsheet so that we can compare what the banked money is on all these projects?
That's where you take notes.
Okay.
That's where, those are questions and testimony. You may get some backup documents that indicate the history and what's already in the bank. Sometimes on the sheet in the budget in your 3-ring notebook will indicate, there'll be a chart at the bottom that will say like FY19, there was this amount of money and what it was used for. FY20, this amount of money and what's supposed to, it could be planning, could be documents, it could be construction. That will be on the sheet in the bottom. But that's part of our work as testimony. You ask the question, you want $500,000 and we gave you 3 million last year. How much of that has been spent? What are you gonna do with this new $500,000? Those are up to us as committee members to ask those questions. And then you take notes, you gotta take some notes. And then when we revisit that in 5 weeks, you go back to your notes and say, hey, wait a minute, they didn't need all of this $500,000 because they already have 18 million in the bank. Maybe we can shave it down a little bit.
Is that theoretically though something we could just pull the budget from years past so that we could be able to look at that?
Yeah. Wayne?
So this 18 million bank that's the number we heard of just a little earlier about the assessment of what the cost would be, that basis for this.
That was working our way through originally, but yes. And then,
Because that was that what we talked about a little while ago about the 18 million, but it's probably a lot more than that now.
That's why we have an ongoing 2-year capital bill. So some of these items are reoccurring. You'll see them probably again. This is, the budget is unfolding. Tristan?
It seems like the building's a bit of a white elephant. And
only the foundation.
I was curious, have you thought about other alternatives, like putting out an RFP for parking elsewhere, demolition, considering some other factors like, as we heard yesterday, office space, maybe a 20-year sort of budget life cycle, expected life cycle for office space in some cases. These are things we could get more creative about. I'm sure it's been thought through, but just wanted to get some more background.
Is there land available and office space available in Burlington that's reasonably priced? There's a pit.
Right, in what, year and a half, 2 years, there'll be plenty more office space perhaps, but yes.
I can help.
Thank you, Joe. Jump in. You go for it.
Not a week goes by where we're not reassessing some portion of our portfolio. A couple of years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we hired architectural, I forget what we call them, I'm not making Jason. We hired a consulting firm to do an analysis of the value of the building, the real estate market, the condition, the cost of the repairs. 4 years ago, I think, it was by a hair making more sense to hold on to it. But we're always looking at that data, and there are points in time that memorialize decisions like budget presentations where there could be further conversation. But am I being vague enough?
Is there anything we could do to 4 years, a lot has changed in 4 years. So is there anything that could be done to reassess that?
Can we recess that question for 2 weeks?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think you are on a productive track. And I think
They're
it's
code
better
words,
placed
wait
when
for the
we're
budget.
discussing individual projects versus the overview. So a really good thing for you to bookmark. We appreciate your engagement.
There'll be something in the Capitol bill about it.
We can discuss it a lot more.
Yeah. Should we get into the type of concrete that we use?
Switch to Mac here, I won't have to worry about it.
You really want to.
No, that's an insight.
Okay, all right, yes. I know. Anything else on one way? Hearing none, moving on to Montpelier for the State House maintenance of interior historic finishes. And that almost boils down to, but not completely, just carpet and drapes. And this is David Sheets' line item. Basically, we help him out. What we've been trying to do is over the years, David's been looking to keep up on the restoration and replacement of the carpet that we have throughout the building and some of the drapes that we have. We have been struggling with finding a carpet installer who can handle and deal with the carpet that we have. A lot of the carpet that we have here is not your traditional carpet. It is loomed carpet, broad loom, and the seams are hand stitched. And it was a difficult task 10, 20 years ago to get the carpet made with the patterns that they had. They have found a new way of doing this that looks very promising. However, the contractor that we have on board just is too booked and cannot make it. So what we're first leaning towards is this year, we're going to be patching the carpet that's between the card room and Cedar Creek room. So that is going to happen while you're away for Martin Luther King holiday.
Oh, this weekend?
Wow.
This coming weekend?
It is this weekend.
Yeah.
So we're hoping to have them in here, do that patch, and so that'll look a little bit better. It has been patched before 2 years ago, I want to say it was done. And part of that
Right.
with David is, even though you hang on to the carpet and what's in storage, it looks great, but the wear and tear on it really shaves off the carpet fibers themselves. So when that was done, it was that individual who installed that carpet also shaved down the new stuff to make it blend in so it didn't look like a patch. Ultimately, we want to get on a rotating basis that over the years, this carpet gets replaced at the end of life and so forth. So along with the card room, the Lieutenant Governor's office, Governor's office is also up next for replacement of the carpet and drapes. And David's got a plan And we'll bring him in when we discuss this, the new biennium and what he's looking to. That's where that money is going. It hasn't been spent right now because we can't get people in the doors other than starting this right now. Same goes with the drapes. Not a lot of people out there doing the drapes that they did in the past.
So I'm sure, we went through freshman orientation, and I'm sure David Sheets gave you folks the history of the building, but I think the thing, we are so different here in our state capital in that it's our workplace. So we work in a museum. We work in a museum. We have to honor that and take care of it. And also, this is one place in Vermont that's one of the highest tourist attraction. So it's always, it's a tourist focus. So there's a lot of tourists that come through here. We don't see it during the session. But you come up here during the summer, you come up during foliage, we have buses that stop here. There's a lot of traffic that goes through this building. So we honor it. And it's a balance of it's our workplace, so you need to make sure it's accommodating for our work, but also you want to keep the integrity of the building and its historical importance and there for the public to enjoy, as we enjoy. We enjoy this building every day. We drive in, we see that dome, we see the building, you get shivers up your back and say, I work in there.
Yeah.
But it's also a gem for the whole state of Vermont. And that's what this line item is really about. And we're the committee that deals with this. I mean, things that happen out here in this building, like the sound system, the money originally came from here. We wanted to do that sound system 8 years ago.
Yeah.
We struggled with that. How do we do this? Because at one point for that sound system, we would have had to take all the desks out of the chamber, all the seats out of the chamber, all the rugs out of the chamber, and dig up the concrete underneath to get the wiring and everything through. That was where we were about 5 years ago with that. So we're the committee that really makes some of these decisions about the integrity of this building. I feel very responsible to the history of this building and what Vermont's about.
Next up, State House Exhibition, Interpretation, Design, and Construction. David, this is a continuous work, mainly that David is working on, but I think the largest one that he's tweaked here in the past is the Alexander Twilight portrait and the not really the plaque, but the information describing that is below the painting in the front lobby of the first floor. And so there are other items throughout the State House, the paintings and whatnot that he's working on, and that's where this comes from.
The painting, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This includes the cost of the painting itself?
That I don't know that.
I don't think so.
Yes, donated.
Friends of the
Is it
State
Friends
House.
of the State House?
The artwork is donated, so the interpretive plan is really about, this building is full of a lot of pictures of the same kind of person, partly due to a standard that was established that you had to be governor or military to appear here. And so this is part of a long-term effort to have a more equitable representation of Vermont while still making it look like a state house.
I think the artist was compensated though. I don't think the painting was donated.
Donated by the,
Could be the Friends of the State.
Friends of the State House, I think, is who did
Might be.
that. Yeah.
And they can go out and solicit donations.
Yep.
painting itself is
I get their letters.
Okay,
Next up, I'm gonna need a little help with, because on my sheet, it says 9. I know it's Newport Courthouse something, elevator project maybe, renovation,
it is replacement, planning and design.
of the Newport Courthouse.
It's where we're gonna put the new courthouse.
That's true. We purchased it in the 80s. It was a federal courthouse post office at the time. When we purchased, they had moved out. And when we purchased it, we carved out several offices in the southeast corner, I believe, and had to put in a second means of egress. It's an old style building where you have a center stair tower, and also had inside of the center stair tower is an elevator. And the elevator is about 36 inches wide. You can get to the 30-inch door, I think, and it's probably about 4.5 feet long. It is long, but you almost have to be single file in the elevator because they had to get it inside the stair tower. That elevator is original, I believe it, built in 1904. And so it has seen its end of life, along with the people that have agents, the judiciary people and state's attorney who work in there. They need additional space. I mean, it just doesn't work well for judiciary and the age of the building. So, you know, it's a historic building. It's on the historic register. So, and we don't own a lot of land. So doing a bump out of sorts from addition doesn't work well. We did do a study a number of years ago to connect the county court with the district court at the time. And what that connector did was basically short, because there's two different elevations. So it was really main entrance, elevators and walkways with some conference room space and the likes of that, courtroom space to get you to the two buildings. It was around, when we did that, I want to say around $14 million to do that. And it really wasn't a good way to go, spending the money to spend that much on connecting those two buildings and the amount of work that had to be done, because it still was not optimal for the courts. So what we're doing is we were out there doing using this money to do the planning, to do how much new space, flex space, which the judiciary need for judiciary, the courts, state's attorney, and probation for all have moved out because they just need more space. There's new space right now. Bringing it back in. A year ago, Eric, a year and a half ago, we did go out looking for land. I think we had 4 options, 3 of them out of town, and one that's another hole in the ground in Newport, but that was way above the assessed value. And so we're still continuing to plan on how much space we need, but we look for more.
Who owns that hole in the ground now?
The receiver for JP.
Oh, it's still in the receiver's hands that piece, yeah. Okay.
So this is an example when people say, why does it take so long?
Yeah.
Why does it take so long?
Yeah.
Well, you may think that you have this piece of property across the street, basically,
Yeah.
in the center of this community
Yeah.
that they want to develop and get rid of this hole that's been there for 10 years.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So you think that, you know, this is a given, and then we give BTS the dollars to go ahead, and they could have an option to purchase the land, and they get into negotiations and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So then they're back here the next year, so you've lost a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're still looking for land. So we want to replace this courthouse. It could take us 3 years to find land. In the meantime, we say, is it really worth it to keep waiting? Is it better to stay where we are, demolish the building and build new?
Yep.
Those are decisions that will be made here in this committee on different things. We went through this with the archives. This is boring as everything, but the archives were up in the Secretary of State's building, Redstone. This is over there. And Redstone was a beautiful building in its day, but it needed a lot of maintenance, and it wasn't appropriate to store the state archives because it was in the basement. And we wanted to build a building for archives. Well, I think it took us 4 years to figure out where to go. And the original thought was to go up in Middlesex. And people were saying, no, we don't want to do that. Then we were looking at space in Montpelier. And then 1 year we looked at a space where 89 is, where you have the exit and entrance ramps kind of in there. We looked at that, thought that was a go. That fell apart.
Didn't National Life have a veto on that?
I don't remember, was
Yes,
it?
they had the view rights.
They had the view
So they
rights.
could not go up.
Yeah.
And that's all ledge. So
Yeah.
that was a problem of the amount of ledge you moved that.
So then where we ended up was in Middlesex, where we had originally started, but it took us 4 years to get there.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing happened with the health lab, and the same thing happened with the forensic lab. You know, you just think it's gonna be a breeze because you think you got land somewhere, and maybe that town doesn't want you there. The same thing happened when we did the ag and the A&R lab, because that got wiped out with Irene. Up at Waterbury, it was in the complex. It got totally wiped out. We worked with VTC and said, hey, this would be a great opportunity for your students to have access to the state lab, our environmental and agricultural lab. And we worked out that we could use their property and build our lab, but they would have access to that for their educational needs. Well, there was a camp owner across the road that didn't want it there because he wanted to sell his campground and thought it would hurt the sale of the campground. And that got tied up for about a year and a half. That got tied up in the courts. It's out of our hands, but that's what happened. So I'm just laying this down because you're going to hear with the correctional facility, the women's replacement, why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so long? And we're going to be given options, whatever they may be, to do it on the space we're in now, possibly, purchase land, do a standalone, or do it on a state-owned property somewhere. And all of those come with costs and time. So that's why I'm laying this out, just to kind of lay the groundwork so folks can be thinking like that when we talk about the women's correctional facility.
It's not just BGS is slow.
BGS gets the blame.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I can see that. There's a municipal parking lot behind the municipal building in Newport that's not well used.
They didn't present that land to us.
Maybe you should try and go after it. It's not very well used. There's very few lots, and it's got a great view of the lake.
They may not want a courthouse there.
Well, that may be. I mean, it's up to the city. It's the city's property.
Are you dealing with a height restriction too, to go up? No.
Typically, our buildings work well within the zoning restrictions. We do deal with, that's one of the issues that in 4413 we have to abide by. So I haven't read Newport's for a while. It's probably conditional use to go a little bit higher, so.
Yeah.
But no. I need a property first to worry about that.
Well, no, I'm saying on the existing property.
On the existing?
Yeah,
Because of the historic nature of the building, we have not looked of expanding that further.
yeah.
It's what, 4 floors now, I think.
Yes.
And it may not be able to hold.
Yeah.
Well, the weight of.
Weight bearing.
Floaters, yeah.
Did you have your hand up, Eric?
Get mentioned the restriction on retail in the funding for the building.
No, we did put in that language, didn't we? That we would not want to be in a situation where we have a building where the courthouse is on top of retail space, and then we would end up being a landlord to that retail space. Because that was one of the things that the building could have retail space to really help the economic development in Newport.
Yeah.
And we're saying, we don't want to be landlords. We've been down that road before.
Uh-huh.
So those are the considerations we need to weigh when we're presented with projects and communities.
It's not a bad segue though into the next building that's up, the Bloomer building. That does have retail on the first floor, and I don't know how long it's been vacant, Eric. I don't know. A restaurant in there, and we are just now in the works with a lease.
Yes.
Getting somebody in there, a restaurant in there. We will be putting a bathroom in, because right now, the way it's laid out, you've got to come to the public lobby. And of course, we lock the doors at night, so that's been a problem with the restaurant that is there. So now we're changing the layout of the restroom so that that restaurant can function on its own and not have to come to the public lobby. But yeah, that is an issue where there's retail and we lease it out. But with Asa Bloomer building, this was a building that we tried to go out to bid on, but again, bonding was an issue, and so we had a contractor build it and own it for 20 years. One problem with that has been at the end of 20 years, they were 15 years on, they were not putting any money into the building. So when we inherited it, we ended up replacing the air conditioning system, the main air handling units, the boilers, fire alarm. We got to redo the roof. The skylight has an issue, so we're going to be working at that. And so those are the items that we have going forward now of doing all of that. There is works, the commissioner mentioned the planning study because Social Security moved out. How do we refit up that area with people, consolidate leases, and that would be coming forward in the future. But this here is to be taking care of the issues with what's gone on over the past 20 years that have not been dealt with.
And that happens where a private entity owns it They take the profit and government
Yep.
takes the risk.
Yep. And with nursing homes, we faced that. Out of state ownership of nursing homes.
Wayne and then Eric.
So we own it now.
Oh, yeah.
So how did that work? They owned it for 20 years. It was a contract written they owned it for 20 years, and at the end of that, it was
a lease to own, and at the end of 20 years, you go.
state money built it.
No, well,
It was,
it was there. It's the house scale. I think it was house scale, wasn't it? It was connected with house scale.
yeah, I don't know enough. That was back in the day that I was just a project manager and didn't look at the big picture.
Bob Wood and I took a tour of that when it was in the preliminary stages.
I was just curious as to how we acquired the title to it, the rights to it, the ownership of it.
That I don't know.
I think that was maybe agreed to at the end of the lease payment. It would come over to the state because we're paying a lease to own.
That's what I was wondering.
And we did that. We also did that with where the Public Service Board is above the bank. We also did that with that building, something similar to
We
that.
had 2 floors at 112 State Street.
And we were doing that at that time because there was a lot of pressure on the capital bill. So we couldn't afford these projects, so we would enter into these agreements with private entities, and how that contract is structured for that. But we pay a lease for state space.
And then the good one, sorry.
No? We have a question from Eric,
Okay.
so.
What continues on in this is in the basement, very interesting that we didn't know about before really owning it, is we've had some issues of sewer gas going on over the years. Come to find out, there's past testimonies that a river's running through it, but there is stormwater and sewer that is connected that is running through, and it's not just a pipe. The pipe comes into the building and somewhat ends, and it's sort of a trough down underneath the floor. And so we have videotaped it, and you can see where here's the water level, here's the walls coming up, and over time, it is also flooded up and over. So then when it leaves the building, it goes to the city system. So we are now working with an engineer to look to see where that water is coming from, what we can do with it, and also with the city. And what's coming up next is to actually go in and clean out that trough to find out really how deep it is and what's really transpiring. So it's very interesting on what the outcome of that was.
That's a historic process though, Open pits.
So Eric?
How much money is in that project altogether right now?
I could not tell you off the top of my head.
You talking Newport? Or
No, Asa Bloomer.
Asa Bloomer, yeah.
Ongoing.
It's ongoing, yeah. We put in
Enough to take care of the trough?
No, it's other issues. No, it's roofing, it's other
Yeah.
issues. Yeah, we put in 400,000 one year and 1.5, so there's 2 million there basically, and they've had money in the past. So that, when we get the governor's budget, we can do a deeper dive there, because I'm sure it'll probably still be in the budget, maybe.
Is the plan to keep the retail space? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just have one piece of follow-up. I've heard from many, like my neighbors and people that have businesses in the area. If you go down to Asa Bloomer, there is an open, more or less, there's no listing of what agencies are even in the building. It's blank. So if, somebody's looking for services and it's kind of like, yeah, go to the Asa Bloomer building, they'll walk by it 15 times because there's no, what's that word called? Like that's outside and they would have a list of all.
Directory?
There we go.
Directory.
Yes, the directory is completely empty. And from my understanding, the directory's been empty for like 10 years.
So nobody's
So
brought it
more or less,
anybody's
who's
attention.
responsible for putting the directory in?
That's how they manage their workload.
So, that's why nobody goes there.
Nobody shows up, we can sell the building.
That's on you.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably us, so we'll look into it.
Thank you.
Chip?
I'll send an email to the DFO.
Eric's on it.
Another Eric with a seat.
Stuff done.
That's the power, that's the power.
When I go across the street to get a new sport jacket and it has 7 on up there, they'll be like, huh. You're the man.
Now you know who's there.
It was solved all of Rutland's problems.
Good or bad, we don't want credit.
Chip?
I'm just wondering, are you planning on keeping the retail space or are you going to turn that into?
Yes, that is,
So what happened in St. Johnsbury, when they renovated the new Avenue House, all of the retail space down below was empty. But when they put the new furnace in and they had reliable heat, reliable hot water and whatnot, all of those spaces became rented. And within no time after the renovation was complete. So you might find that you have better retail space.
we've got a tenant coming in, so.
Yeah, good. That's good.
We have a current tenant in the building too, right?
Since you don't have a directory.
Good, nobody knows who's there.
Nobody knows who's there.
Perhaps we do, perhaps you don't.
Yeah, like Eric said, you want to buy a new shirt, you can't buy.
But they access,
We access through to the Mead building, which is next door.
they got a second means of egress.
Can we please make this all more complicated?
You need two
No doubt.
directories.
Just get a directory there.
Come on, boss.
If nothing else on Asa Blomer, next up is Springfield. Southern
Thank you.
State Correctional Facility door control. I'm gonna refer to Jonathan on this one. He's more inherently involved.
Jonathan Griffin with BGS. So I've got some staff, I've managed the project managers that do the capital projects. And one of my PMs actually had this project just left on Monday of this week. So we just re-signed it. But the project's going very well. DEW is our construction manager on the project. Right now they're in one of the living units, replacing the door control system. And they're going through the whole facility, replacing all of the components that control the door control system. So what that is the locks that the security or DOC uses to basically activate or deactivate locks within a door. So and it includes the camera system as well. So I don't know if you want specific details about that or if that's at a later date, but.
On the camera system, on how that works? Yeah.
So basically it's camera call up. So when somebody comes up to a door, automatically the camera will call up onto the screen that the main control person's at, so they can see who's at that door and then whether or not they need to unlock it or not. So that security guards, DOC staff can freely move throughout the facility. And the old system was not functioning properly, and we're trying to get to one system throughout all facilities, which is the Cornerstone system. And they've been on site and they've already done the first living unit. So right now we're moving through unit by unit and essentially moving the individuals within that facility to vacant spaces around, so that way we can go in and do other work inside that unit in addition to door control, such as showers, some pipe sleeving. There's some of the major maintenance things that are occurring at the same time while the unit's vacant. And the project's going well.
For the door controls, is it also the units, the cells themselves? Or just the sally ports and then
Both.
all of it?
It's
Okay.
both. And
John?
Have you had to cut down the occupancy during the project?
I'm not sure as to exactly what DOC had to do for occupancy. They'd have to speak to that. But
Okay.
Nobody went to Mississippi.
Joe can speak to that, I guess.
Let me do a little more history here for you. We started in Newport with this. We picked a door control system that we're gonna use throughout. Northern State Correctional Facility in Newport is done. We finally finished that one. Springfield was up next. And it's based on, as we go around the state, the need, and that was the next one up that has this need. Newport originally, we have money in the capital bill to house them out of state. However, they chose to house them in the gym instead. So we built bunks, brought in bunks and everything else. The gym in Newport had a restroom and all that, so that wasn't a problem. In Springfield, they also wanted to keep the inmates in state, so we modified the gym down there. That gym had bathrooms but no showers. So we had, part of this project was to add showers, and also that thought in the future going, okay, if we have another situation where we had an empty unit for renovation, they could have that move in the gym. So it's not lost money, it actually works out well. So that's where we were at with that one. However, COVID hit. And they have, I think each facility, I have to defer to corrections on that, but I know in Springfield, they have a unit empty for COVID. But they still have not, because they're down population right now, have to move to the gym. Yeah. So it may come, but it is ready.
How long is this project at each facility?
Depends on the size of the facility. Newport being first, logistically was a little bit harder because of the new system coming in. I don't know what your duration is for Springfield.
It's approximately 18 months, but Springfield also is a little farther along than Newport. The Newport system that they replaced was an older system. Springfield being new construction, wasn't as far behind on the upgrades they had to do to make the door control system work. I think one thing in particular is the sensors in the doors. In Newport, they couldn't get the doors. They ended up having to replace a bunch of doors because the doors were racked.
Or what?
They were twisted.
I wonder why. I think it's from the,
Exactly, from the excessive abuse on the door.
Yeah.
But in Springfield today, we haven't had to replace as many doors as we did in Newport. So the project is it's going a little bit more quick so far.
And they're not
That's a rough jail.
And they're not in the gym yet. We haven't had to use the gym. There is some talk about using the gym though right now because they need to do some sewer lining in some of those facilities, and rather than having just one living unit empty, they need to have the whole building empty. So they might relocate those individuals to the gym and the vacant unit, so that way we can shut down the water and do the sewer lining through that unit with no occupancy.
so Eric,
I just wanted to interject that you're gonna have more than a few conversations about bed count in facilities relative to inmate population. And this is a really good illustration of why sometimes it's good to have a few more beds than you have people. Because otherwise we're spending money to build a unit in a gym and depriving people of a gym. You know, there are like all kinds of hardships that result from this. So having the capacity to move people around the system is really, really important.
so I've got a couple of things. What facility is due next after Springfield?
Northeast Regional and the Caledonia Work Camp.
So St. Johnsburg.
St. Johnsburg, yeah.
Spring.
Because this sort of plays into the bigger conversation of where do we go with replacing our correctional facilities?
Mhm.
Because we've taken the first step in saying we're going to begin with the women's facility. But that sets the process in place as to what do we do with our other facilities out there, because some of them have aged and deferred maintenance is pretty high for some of those buildings. So I want to
We
put that on the table for people to start thinking. We're not,
have worked with corrections on which was the bad ones, because the problem is once the door fails, it's not the outside door, hopefully. But you know, the cell itself cannot be locked, so you can't be locking the inmates in. So it is a problem. But we had taken that into account. Prior year funding, in 2022, FY 2022 funding, those funds, we evaluated that. St. Johnsburg was next. And Rutland is being designed at the same time. Rutland was constructed first. And back in the day when it was on paper, they just erased the name of Rutland and put in St. Johnsbury, and we built St. Johnsbury. It's almost identical. A little bit different. Rutland has air conditioning, the only facility that's 100% original air conditioning. St. Johnsbury does not. But that is where the design right now, using the same engineer and everything else, looking at both of them because they're identical so much. It's easy to get that done, whether it goes down there or not. At least the design is done. That's in the works.
Work camp is years newer than the facility.
the work camp was built in the mid-90s
Yeah.
at the same time Newport was built.
Yep.
But during those years, encoders changed during those times and how to function, but that was basically coax with cameras. And you had an intercom.
Okay.
The technology now is programmable logical controller, PLC. Little industrial sized computer. And so you connect all these things into it. So if you look at the screen that the correctional officer has in front of them, you push a button, you can shut the lights off. Turn them on, you can shut the water off for all the cells. So all that now connects in electronically. As Jonathan was saying, somebody at a door pushes a button, the camera knows and brings that up on the screen full size to that officer. You can see whether it's an inmate, whether that inmate is supposed to be going to like the health and well-being area, and the nurses area or something like that. So they have that control right away. The old way, you had one camera dedicated and you had to have it monitored for it. And so, you go in and there's 30 monitors.
Well, they were designed with the Sally port to allow access to each unit and the entrance and exit on a visual, actually.
Somewhat, yes, and that has changed over the years.
I suspect it might have, yeah.
A lot is done in master control.
Yeah. Understood.
Wired or wireless now?
Still wired.
Still wired, and so that's increasing. If the technology will ever let you go, because if you could go to wireless, it's going to be cheaper, right?
That's tough in a correctional facility
Potentially, but
because of the walls.
It's a lot of concrete and steel.
Yep, it's tough. Tristan.
What's the expected lifetime of these systems?
As Jonathan was saying, we're back at, it was easier at Springfield because the technology was there. That is based on a PLC system, and it's been 20 years. And we're completely having to redo it. Now, with that redo, it's not only the servers, the video, it's also corrections with like this door monitored now. So that's the difference. So each door, unless you can look through, you got to have a camera on both sides, the intercom button on both sides. So, and because it is all concrete and steel, you're not just dropping a conduit down, an exposed conduit, because you don't want the inmate grabbing it.
And that leads to my second question in terms of the abuse that our buildings get in some of the worlds that we evolve in. And one is the correctional world. The buildings, do you see a lot of abuse on the inside of that building? And what is some of that you experience, that you see over time?
It's 24/7. A lot, the Sally Port doors where you're coming, an inmate is going to the cafeteria, dining hall 3 times a day. That is 6 for one individual to open that door. So it sees a lot of cycles.
Just got a quick, the term Sally Port, I'm not familiar with.
Sally Port is 2 doors and something in the center. So you're coming in this way if you're walking from the outside, you go through the first locked door. The door closes behind you as you pass through. The other door does not open until that one is locked, and then you pass through.
And they know who you are.
Yes, so if they're, if somebody thinks they're gonna run through an escape, they're trapped in that cell.
Yeah.
And there's one for people and vehicles.
And if you're a visitor, you also have to go into a Sally Port. The
Right.
door closes behind you, and then the one in front of you will open to get into that next space. Okay. So what else? I mean, there's a lot of abuse that happens to the building.
Yes, it's because of the 24/7, it's wear and tear. It's also, there are some bad inmates. And so they do, damage things. There was a couple of grills down there for, I want to say it was a turnier. And what they've done is they took the vanes and somehow worked out a lot of the grills. So instead of the standard grill, even though it was a correctional grade, we've had to beef that up to something even stronger. Inmates are very creative in what they can do. So the closing of the doors, some of it's wear and tear on its own. The ones that Jonathan's talking about of warping is some inmates, you take a book, you stick it in between the hinge side of the door and slam the door. It doesn't work on the first time, but you continually do that and it starts to warp the door.
Why do they do that? Is it?
They're just not happy people. I'm not lying.
But what would be the impact? Why?
Well, the book, that starts the warping of the door because of the pressure
No,
that it creates.
I know that, but why would they put a book there? What is it? Prevents the door from locking? Is that what it does?
Some of them do it, I think, when they're upset and they do that, kind of slam their door.
Just to intentionally damage.
It's like flushing stuff down the toilet.
Yeah, we have what's called a muffin eater.
Muffin monster.
Oh, muffin
And
monster.
an auger monster. We had it.
Is that just at Springfield? Do you have that at all of them?
I think their muffin monsters are at all of them. I believe auger monsters are only at 4.
And explain what they do. And they're outside of the building.
A muffin monster, look, Lauren Washburn should be the one, because he did nickname her, she installed most of them. But what it is, it's just basically a grinder. So all the sewage that is coming down through the sewer pipe goes through this grinder, and it grinds up everything. It'll grind up a 2x4. It doesn't like latex gloves or plastic. That does mess that up. And it's designed that when it does bind up, it actually automatically reverses. And so it kicks it out. It can kick out stones that go down there. But just about everything that is flushed will go through the grinder and comes out the other end. That ground up material goes to the sewer treatment plant. Where we have an auger monster, after it goes to the grinder, there's an auger. And what that auger does is, the same time the grinder comes on, the auger turns on, and anything that comes out of the grinder goes through the screen, and it's automatically augered up into a trash barrel. And so our O&M maintenance staff goes through and empties the barrel. It's just a trash bag, you pull it up, and away you go.
So what are some of the things that are flushed down the toilet or pushed down the drains?
You name it. The worst is a blanket, but in some cases, because of the size of the sewer pipe, it can actually make it through to the grinder and out. Sometimes it gets just plugged on the other side of the toilet. Maintenance staff has to come in and fish that out. But gloves, books, paper, you name it, it is flushed.
Never thought you'd think about these things, right?
We did have a case where the kitchen crew in St. Johnsbury started a pot of potato hooch over the oven piece there, but they discovered it before, I guess it became vodka.
I think in all locations now, with this new system going in, the correctional officer does the flushing every 15 minutes or something like that.
Oh, really?
So you don't have a lot of that stuff now being flushed.
Ah,
I don't know what the cycle is, but
interesting, yeah.
Tristan, do you have a question?
I guess just a technical thing. The muffin monster grinds everything that goes down that's flushed. And how do you separate the liquids? How does the auger monster separate the liquids from the solids that go to the trash?
the auger, it's on a screen and it rotates up that screen. So any of the liquid waste passes through the screen and continues down to the sewer treatment plant. It's worth seeing, I guess, but it's a brush system on the screen that breaks it out.
Think gold mining.
What goes into the waste basket is the ground up material and not a lot of the waste.
Thank you.
It's what we don't think about that's going on in our
That's for sure.
Aaron?
Yeah, I would just like to point out that you will probably find something similar on every municipal wastewater plant also. These folks are more creative than your average residential customer, but it is really interesting to see what people try to put down toilets.
So again, when we.
Is our new motto toilets are us? And yesterday with it.
Unless you have your own stuff.
It's the new stair bridge, I guess.
Theater bridges, we're not there yet. But this is a good segue. I'm gonna stop here so we can take a break because we're gonna be hearing from Sabrina on the Women's Correctional Facility and what they've done to date on, well, as much as you can share. But I just wanna, this discussion has really said, wherever you build a correctional facility, it needs to be in a community that has a wastewater and drinking water system. That's the ideal. So automatically that limits in the state where you can house facilities of this nature. And it limits where BGS can look. And that plays into when we start talking about siting facilities, whether it's a correctional facility or a mental health facility or anywhere where we're housing people who are under custody of the state. You need to be on property that's connected to municipalities. And municipalities can then, like they do right now in South Burlington, and I'm not sure about St. Albans, but right now in South Burlington, the municipality entered into a contract with the state, with DOC, about how many inmates can be housed at the correctional facility in Burlington because of their wastewater capacity.
Yep.
Because that facility, when it was male, was bumping up over 200. And the city said, wait a minute here, and I think the cap is 170, maybe 180.
So Brenda will have that in her slideshow.
Well, but those are factors that we have to deal with when we're talking about where are we going to place the women's facility, and what is it going to look like?
It's 118 gallons a day per bed.
per bed.
per bed.
So if you have 100 beds,
In your health nursing area, you don't count those, and you don't count your holding cells and or your security, fire security cells. It's
Yeah.
just your normal bed that are counted, because that is figured into that.
okay. So let's take a 15-minute break and come back at 25 after, and we'll shift